that. So I wanted to make an appeal for better understanding of the FI, because I think that and I don't know if this is true or not, and in a way it doesn't really matter, because I'm not trying to fight with anybody here. But in the places that I've been doing my research online about my sort of, the live research of things people have made and posted on YouTube, probably because I've been looking at a lot of materials that are made by very heavy FE users. There are probably lots of other reasons, but that's one reason, I think. I think that might be why I've come in contact with more materials in which I detect a bit of an FE bias. And I'm thinking, for example, of like one extremely well-known video in which there are two celebrities that are. The video is about sort of using a real-life example of two actors who are undergoing an interview, and there's this running commentary of how to sort of see FI in action versus FE in action. And there are several phrases in it where I believe FI is being posited as a failure of FE. There actually there's a phrase, at least I think twice in there, where commentary is saying, "Oh, look, here's the FI user. Look how they're not doing FE. Look how they're not doing FE again. Look how they're not." And I was like, is nobody else seeing? Anyway, I'm working on something. I'm going to have a bit of a creative response to that a little bit later, and not a response, but just an exploration from my point of view on that. That's coming up later. But I think some places there, and I can understand why. I think that there is some anti sort of FI bias out there, and in some things that people are making. And I think I understand it. The more I learn about the differences between FI and FE expression, I'm learning a lot more about extroverted feeling function related stuff right now, because I'm in contact with so many INFJs, for example, and I'm looking at their work, and I'm talking with different INFJ people, and I'm listening to what they're saying about their experiences and perceptions of the world and the social interaction. I'm watching them interact with one another, and it's kind of blowing my mind, I gotta say. That's something I was referring to in my other videos the last week of my absurd INFJ problem. It's really expanding it's really enlightening what I'm learning, and I can't wait. I'm right in it, and I'm going to be in it for a while, and it's going to change my life. Already learning more about FE has given me some preliminary traction, I would say, and some sort of communicational and conflict resolution problems that I've been kind of stuck with and haven't known what to do with for quite a while. And it's learning about the extroverted feeling and watching heavy-duty extroverted feelers deploy their skills and their perspectives in terms of relating to others and harmony promotion and so on. It's been extremely useful for me already, and I've only just begun to learn about it. So it's really, really neat. Just had to say that. But so what that means too is more I learn, of course, the more I learn about extroverted feeling, then the more I also will learn. I learn just by going, oh, that's different. It's pointing up in a very sort of real life example kind of way, how I am an introverted feeler. And it helps me to see what that looks like from the outside. And when I do that, I can see much more easily why it is that FI could get a bad rap sometimes, because it's difficult. Its expression can be difficult and challenging and annoying and disruptive and all those things that the bad rap says that it is. But here's what I'd like to make an appeal for people who don't naturally understand it or naturally appreciate its value. I would like to make an appeal to those people on a few bases for trying to understand it better, and for I'm hopefully going to put forth a few perspectives in which it might be looked at in a less negative sort of way. So number one, I think that like the biggest reason of all for trying to understand it and understand its place is that, well, we're stuck with it. There's that very practical kind of consideration. I mean, there are 4 types of the 16, a quarter of the types that have the FI function very high in their cognitive stack, and they didn't ask for it. Again, I'm one of them. We didn't ask for it. We can't help it. We can learn things to modify it and so on. But it's a reflex. It's a handedness. It's a part of what we're all about. If you can't take it out, even those of us who would want to. So maybe we should try and, get along with it as well, to the extent we can. And as for this perspective that the introverted feelers have, that they are that they are sort of, the way I would put it, I've never heard anyone else say this one, it's this sort of insistence, again, this insistence on the individualism, or the need to at least check in with, concerns of individualism in the case of heavy FI users. Again, this is not something we really have a choice in. This is what we do. This is kind of, it's a built-in kind of lens through which we understand things, or how we most sort of naturally and instinctively begin to understand things. It's not where we should necessarily end in our search for understanding and perceiving things correctly, but it's where we have to start. Put it that way. We don't have a choice about that. It's where we have to start the process, because it's built into it, what we are. And part of that is this sort of, perhaps this is strange for others, and it's even strange to me to be saying this, because the concept is rather new to me, but it does ring true. It's as if the introverted feelers were almost like in a silo, It's like the self is experienced as separate from others, as separate from the group. And that's not, that's not always fun, but it's, or, not everything that comes sort of from that launch pad is not necessarily terrific for the individual so concerned, or the group they're a part of. It is not always easy, in many senses of the word, but it also is kind of unavoidable. And it does have, by virtue of sort of feeling oneself to be a distinct self from others, that is the launching pad for the best of what the heavy-duty introverted feeling cog function people have to offer the rest of the world. So again, you could try and remove it, but if you take it out, the world is going to lose a whole bunch of things, which I will get into shortly. So one thing I'd like to say about this so-called very selfish function, which, as Dr. Mike pointed out, and as others have too, it's not so much that it's a selfish function. It is self-absorbed, however. When you're very, very aware of the self, you can't not be aware of it, then, yeah, you're going to be thinking of things in those terms quite often, just reflexively. Here's a neat thing, though. Because of the compulsion, because of the need, the very, very fundamental need on the part of heavy introverted feeling users to check in with their own rather independently arrived, in many cases, not always, but quite often, somewhat independently arrived at, deeply, deeply felt value systems, their internal value systems, their internal. The FI users, the moral compass is very much inside the self, and to a much greater degree, I think, more of the time than with heavy extroverted feeling function users, it is impervious to outside opinion. Again, which is the source of what's best about what it offers. It's also the source of the best and the worst, as are any strong characteristics in a personality type. But here's the neat thing, though. For all of the rap it has for being so disruptive of group functioning and irritating, disruptive, and so on, inharmonious, if an heavy FI user's value system, their internal value system, has deemed harmony an important value, getting along with others an important value, not hurting other people or bothering other people, an important value, which is all perfectly possible. Because what these functions are about isn't exactly the content of the value systems. It's just that talks a little bit about the nature, the structure of how the value systems are, how the personality, internalizes the value systems and values them and uses them in expression and in cognition and then ultimately expression. So if you're dealing with an FI user who has those values, those very humanitarian kinds of values, the cool thing is that sometimes an heavy FI user's first impulse will be to, be eruptive, in a situation, to be raw, to be inappropriate, socially inappropriate, and so on. If someone in the group, if someone who's a heavy FE user wants to appeal to the FI person and say, hey, have you thought about the group, or maybe you'd like to think about this or whatever. The neat thing is that FI can, in some cases quite easily too, can be recruited and reintegrated into whatever FE vision is kind of being promulgated within a group. And it can be done quite easily and without resistance. If the FI user agrees, if their value system agrees with what's going on in the group, then they might be the most energetically supportive of what the group wants. They might be incredibly supportive of that within the group. That's very likely to be the case because for them to do it is honoring their value systems. So in other words, that's a really important point to remember, I think, is that introverted feeling, it's the only places where introverted, or not the only, but the big place where introverted feeling becomes a problem in the eyes of others, particularly heavy FE users, who have a understandably difficult time relating to it. When it becomes a problem, that's when you are seeing a disjunction, right? You're seeing a disjunction between what's going on in the group, where that group is kind of going in its action and its attitudes, and it's crossing with the disruptive. I shouldn't have used this quotes. We are disruptive in these situations. It's crossing the FI user's value system, and that's where you're seeing this sort of unpleasant behavior. But a lot of the time, you're not seeing any unpleasant behavior, and you're seeing a whole lot of terrific cooperation that it's easy and nice and good to see because the value system is totally aligned with the group. So everything's fine, everything's going along smoothly, and that's what's happening more of the time in human activity. That's definitely what's happening more of the time than when some FI user is disrupting some sort of group activity with their obnoxious and challenging behaviors. So that's something to think of. And I think precisely because we feel ourselves, this is just a little theory of mine, I don't know, I have to think about this some more, but it occurred to me when thinking about some conflict resolution principles the other day that because heavy introverted feeling cognitive function users, because we naturally feel ourselves to be in a silo, to be separate from others in some very important ways that we can't shake, or in our usual state of consciousness anyway. We can't. It's just, again, kind of reflexive that that's how we face the world. When you consider, too, that it's natural, everything we've learned in neuroscience in the last 25 years, for example, would really support the idea that the human drive to be part of the group is a very, very powerful and very, very deep drive. And it's absolutely fundamental to mental health as well as good social functioning. So that's the case for FI users as well. It's in our best interest, and we know it's in our best interest to most of the time cooperate with others. That is, cooperate or die is really the maxim for humans. And that's even on the level of having our brains be able to develop properly by having attuned attachment to others from the time we come out of our mothers and onward, particularly in the earliest years, the first year of life. And it continues to be important throughout our lives. Our mental and physical health is very, very much dependent on being able to attach to others, to have intimate interdependence with others continually, pretty much. Some of us only need, a few other people to be attached to that way, but most of us need several. And we all, if we're healthy, if our brains are functioning the way they're supposed to, we all need some of that to do well, health-wise. So you could think of it too, like if you're having if you're seeing sort of a disruptive FI-related kind of behavior, something you might think about, and your approach to that person, and having, if you would hope to reintegrate them into the group, one thing you could think of is that probably that FI user wants to be, whether they're aware of it or not at the time, they're all whooped up about something. They want to be part of the group. They desperately, because that is what is human, is to belong. We all need to belong. We really need to belong. On deep, biological and mental level. And so the FI person who's being disruptive, they can't wait to belong again. That's something to think of as you're looking, if you're being irritated by their raw behaviors, their disruptive behaviors, and these terrible, terrible things they're saying or whatever that are, putting people a bit, making them uneasy. Ruining a supper party or whatever it is. Think about this, like the FI person can't wait to come back to the group. It's just that they feel that they can't unless they value their honor system. They can't go against it. And that's a strong, unavoidable drive for us. And sometimes we wish it weren't there, but it is, and we have to deal with it. And then that means that any group we're a part of will have to deal with it to some extent, even if to deal with it means to put us out the door. But, there will have to be some sort of grappling with it on the individual and the group level. And that's just the way of the world, and that's the way it's always been, and that's how it always will be. So maybe we should think about how to do it, manage it well. But the FI person is ready to be they want to come back into the fold. They really do. It's just that there's certain things that boxes that need to be ticked for us internally before we can do that. We can allow ourselves to do that. And that's, again, source of the best things about us and the worst things.